This is Sean with Voices of Racing. We're here with Mike Lashmett. Is it Lashmett or Lashmett?
Lashmett.
Lashmett. All right. And we are in your facility in Brownsburg, and you owned Vintage Indy, which essentially showcases the old restored race cars at events and also showcases them online. So, how long have you had this facility?
Oh, let's see. Rick Duman had the first space. Of course, we're tied in with Duman Turn 4 Restoration, and I think we go back probably at least 3 years, I guess.
3 years.
And the latest addition, this extra last 3,500 square feet, we've been in here about a year now, a little over a year.
All right. So, what do you want to show me here in the front office?
Anyway, this is Vintage Indy's office, and we've got some really cool stuff in here. A lot of Parnelli Jones memorabilia because I worked for Val and Parnelli back in the early 70s during the Johnny Lightning and Viceroy era. These paintings in here are kind of interesting because they're all originals and they were owned by Parnelli and Val, and they're all original to the Victory Circle Club at the former Ontario Motor Speedway. And they're kind of special in that respect. This photograph of Parnelli in Victory Lane at Indianapolis was actually Parnelli's, and it hung over his desk for about 50 years out in Torrance before they dismantled the office last year and closed it up.
Here we have Ellen's Senior, is that right?
Yeah, that's a qualifying picture from 72 at the Speedway with Al Sr. And of course, Val and Parnelli are in it. I'm between Al and Parnelli in the photograph, and George Bignotti to Parnelli's right, and Jimmy Dillamarter, Val Militich, Jim Cook, Lee Petrobon, Al Sr., and Andy's sister Nina.
Wow.
So we finished second with that car behind Mark Donahue. This is that same year. I think picture was taken at Trenton when we ran all the dihedral wings, all the wings on the car, and that's me and Mario. And this is, of course, Bobby's 75 winner, signed by Dan to me.
Go ahead.
That's a 1970, original 1970 Val's Parnelli Jones crew shirt, pit badge, and race day backing card, and pit stop photograph and whatnot.
Go ahead.
This photograph is from Phoenix in March of 74, and that's Gordy Johncock and his new Patrick Racing Eagle. We were unsponsored for the first 3 races of that year, and then STP eventually came back on the car. But that's myself on the vent hose, George Bignotti back here on the wing, and Georgie Huning. And Wally Muskowski was our fueler, and he just stepped out of the frame.
Go ahead.
Oh, this space is Vintage Indy space. We're set up in here for a Vintage Motorsport Council board meeting this weekend here in the shop. But there's a lot of really interesting historical pieces in here. You can start with this Curtis Craft Offie that was the actual pole-winning car at Indianapolis with Walt Faulkner. This was an Agajanian car. It's all original. It's been restored. It runs at some of our events. We've got the Kenwood 962 Porsche, finished 4th and 7th at Le Mans. And this car has run recently in HRS, historical endurance race events. Further in the back, we've got the AMC Spirit that was built for Neil Bonnet, but ended up being driven by Sneva in the Indy 500. The number 11 car is a Formula 5000 car. It's a Talon chassis powered by a stock block Chevy. And that actual car was driven by Chris Amon in the very first Long Beach Grand Prix in 1975, in the fall of 75, when it was a Formula 5000 race. The Champ Dirt car up here on the table is a recent acquisition and something that I found a couple of years ago. And the owner finally contacted me this fall and said he was ready to sell it. And we're going to restore this car. And this car is the famous Old Herman that was built by noted Indy 500 chief mechanic Bill Finley in his shop behind his home on Patricia Avenue in Speedway, Indiana. It's a Finley chassis, stock block Chevy. This actual car won the Hoosier 100 pole 2 years in a row in 1975 and 76 with Johnny Parsons driving it. It also won poles at Springfield and Du Quoin. The car ran from 1972 to 79 in the USAC Silver Crown Series, and it finished second in the points standings in 1976, and in 77 carried the number 2 on it. So it's a very important, famous USAC champ dirt car, and it's going to get restored here in the next year. This is Al Unser Jr.'s Eagle. This is a Black Eagle, B-L-A-T. It was Dan Gurney's answer to ground effects. It was Al Jr.'s rookie year car. This is the car that he was alleged to have so famously blocked Tommy Sneva so that his dad could win the race. And it's got a turbocharged Cosworth engine in it. This car regularly runs with us at Vintage Indy events. And then we have the Paul Russo Novi. This is a tribute car, and it's a stunning car. It was built by Gary Babineau up in Auburn, Indiana, and Gary built some really beautiful tribute roadsters and over the years, including the 64 and 61 Foyt cars and this Paul Russo Novi. And this car also runs with us on a regular basis. This is a normally aspirated 4-cam Ford IndyCar engine from the 60s. Ford Motor Company built this engine purposely for Indianapolis cars. This same type motor won the Indy 500 in 65 with Jim Clark, 66 with Grant Hill, 67 with Foyt, and in 69 with Mario Andretti in the STP Hawk up here in the painting. And this is the actual winning motor out of Mario's 69 Indy 500 winning car. The motor bears all the USAC stamps and markings from when it went through tech inspection. And it's on display here. It's a pretty historical piece.
Yep.
This is a 1972 AAR Eagle. It's chassis 7229. It's an interesting car in that it has no race history, but it's dripping in Dan Gurney and Phil Remington's DNA, as I like to say. There were 2 unsold 1972 chassis. This is one of them. AAR and Dan Gurney owned these cars unassembled for, I don't know, 40 years after the fact. And I don't know, about 15, 20 years ago, Philippe de L'Espinay, who's a friend of Dan's, acquired the 2 unsold cars, restored one as the Mystery Eagle, gave it back to Dan Gurney, and it's in the AAR collection. This is the other car, which Philippe restored as the pole-winning Bobby Unser 1972 Indy 500 Eagle. And this car has run with us countless times, very popular car at all of our events.
Well.
So we got all kinds of memorabilia here, including this pair of original Gasoline Alley garage doors, which are Rick Duman's. A lot of original Gasoline Alley garage signs. Most of these signs are from cars that Rick was chief mechanic on over the years, or has restored since then. A lot of body work up here for ongoing restorations. This is the number 48 Jerry Grant 73 Olsonite Eagle, which we'll see in the other room. This is the cowl for the Mike Mosley Eagle, 74 Eagle that's getting restored in the other room. Lots of jackets, including my Viceroy and Samsonite jacket from 72. Parnelli Jones's personal jacket from when he drove the turbine car in 67. We have one of Ronnie Duman's uniforms up there on the wall. That would be from 66 when he drove the Rev 500 Special for J.C. Agajanian. Just a lot of photographs and posters and a little bit of everything.
And then we get to the big wall of fun over here.
This wall, there's what, 12 cars up there on the wall, and some of them are restored, some of them are not restored, and they're in queue to be restored. But among the restored cars, we've got 2 M24 McLarens. We've got the Johnny Rutherford Budweiser M24 McLaren, which was a McLaren team car. We've got Mario Andretti's Cam 2 McLaren, which was a Penske team car. We've got 2 Gerhardts down here, a 66 and a 67. One was driven by Carl Williams and the other by Bud Tinglestead back there in the back. They're both finished running cars. We've got the first 200-mile-an-hour car from Indianapolis, another M24 McLaren that Tom Sneva drove. The car is restored incorrectly. We're going to correct that and put it back with a Cosworth turbo, charged engine and whatnot. On the top, we've got a VPJ3 that Mario put on the pole at Trenton, practiced with at Indianapolis, also raced it at Milwaukee. Underneath of it, believe it or not, the blue and white car is Joe Leonard's 1973 VPJ2 Samsonite Special that he ran in every race in 73, including the Indy 500, California 500, Pocono 500, you name it. And it was the last full year of competition for Joe because he was seriously injured the start of the season at Ontario in March of 74 and never drove another race. Up in the back rack, we've got a couple of Penske's up there to be restored, and also an AMC, stock block AMC turbocharged Eagle that Roger McCluskey drove, which is awaiting restoration. This car is Shorty Cantlin's second place finishing Miller at the Indy 500. This particular Miller is probably the most valuable car here in the collection, and it's a two-man Miller. And this particular Miller, of all the Miller race cars that were built, ran more Indy 500s than any other Miller.
What was the first year?
You're going to get me on this one. I want to say 32, but I might be wrong about that. I know, but I can't remember. But anyway, early 30s. The cars that are undercover here, this is a Ronnie Ward Champ Dirt car that we found last year up in Wisconsin, restored incorrectly. It's actually a car that was built brand new in 67 by Ronnie Ward for MVS Racers, Dick Cecil. And Rick Duman's father drove this car when it was brand new in 67. He was scheduled to drive it in 68, but Ronnie Duman lost his life a week after the Indy 500 at Milwaukee, and the dirt car races didn't start till later that summer. This is an Epperly laydown offie. This Indy car is the first Indy car that Parnelli Jones ever drove. He drove it in practice, and this car was also driven by Don Branson and Tony Bettenhausen. And it's a running car that regularly competes with us. And over here, this is our restoration room for Duman Turn 4 restoration. We've got quite a few cars in here. Some are almost finished, and some are just beginning, like this Gordon Johncock STP March. But in the background there, that's a Ralt Super V that was bought by Warner Hodgson for Neil Bonnet to get open wheel experience in. And it's being restored right now as a running car. This is Eddie Cheever's Indy 500 winning car. It's one of the few cars the museum does not have. There's not too many Indy 500 winners in private hands, but this is one of them. This car is nearing its completion as far as restoration is concerned.
I'm going to be interviewing Eddie tomorrow about the Unser stories. Yeah, I'll be able to tell him.
Cars here at Rick's, and he's welcome to come and look at it.
Wow. Okay.
This is a Cosworth engine that's going to get rebuilt for the Gordon Johncock STP March, which is being restored. This is an LG 500 Hewland gearbox that's just been restored and freshened with all new suspension pieces on it for the Lloyd Ruby car. This is the gearbox for the Johncock March that's sitting there to my left. And then this is the 1973 Eagle that AAR ran in the Indy 500 with Jerry Grant in 73. It's an interesting car because I personally won 2 races with this car with Gordon Johncock later in the summer. With the loss of Sweet Savage's car, Pat Patrick bought this car from Dan Gurney right after the Indy 500, and Gordon Johncock ran this car from after Pocono on the rest of the year in 73. We won Phoenix and we won Trenton with this in the fall of 73, sat on the front row in Ontario with Pete Revson in the McLaren and Jerry Grant in another AAR Eagle. And it's being restored as the Jerry Grant number 48 AAR, also my Eagle. It's almost finished. And this car is going to run this summer at our events, and we'll also be at the Dan Gurney celebration up at Road America on WeatherTech weekend. This is the Mike Mosley Eagle, the leader card Eagle that he famously drove from last place starting position on the grid in the spring of '74 at Phoenix to win the race. And it was called the Lodestar Eagle, sponsored by Lodestar. The cowl is over there in the other room. It just came back from paint. This car is nearing completion. This car is going to run this summer and also go to the Dan Gurney celebration up at Road America.
Well, this is a pretty amazing facility.
Yeah,
you
a lot
have
to
here.
see here, and a lot of memorabilia on the walls, and photographs and posters and uniforms. Original body work off Joe Leonard's '73 Samsonite car. A couple of my uniform shirts up there at the top. The two prints of the Samsonite car, the '72 Samsonite car and the rendition of the '73 Samsonite car, were personal property of Parnelli Jones, and I acquired them when they closed their office out there. And those pieces are probably going to end up being used on the restoration of the car.
Well, thank you for the tour of your
Thank
Vintage Indy facility, and it's great to see you bringing these cars back to life.
Thanks, Sean. And if anybody wants to visit Duman Turn 4 Restoration, Vintage Indy, you're welcome to stop by, and if we can, we'll accommodate you, and you can come in and take a look at all this great history.
Okay.
All right.